Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 958. My opponent started off with e4 and I went c5. And now he played knight f3. In the live game, I called this the Bowdler attack, what he played. But actually the Bowdler attack is bishop c4 right on move 2 here. So if he had played bishop c4, you can see actually this is a very rare continuation. It's 15 moves in the database out of a total of 50,000 games. And it's not good. The bishop sitting here is a bit of a target, and black can play with e6 and d5, get a quick push into the center with a tempo on the bishop. So I can't really recommend the Bowdler attack. But what white played here was something slightly different. So he went knight f3 first, and then I played d6, and then he went bishop c4. So I called this the delayed Bowdler attack, which is something I just invented. But this doesn't have a name. This was just called Sicilian Defense Modern Lines in the opening book. So we might as well give it a name, because actually I've seen this fairly often, and it's not a bad idea if you think about it. It's just delaying the Bowdler attack for one move, because after knight to f3, black has a number of choices. d6, the line I played, is most popular, but he could also go with e6 or knight c6. And after either of those moves, then white presumably would play something different, because now bishop c4 doesn't really make any sense, and black can still get in that d7 to d5 pawn push in a single move and kick the bishop back. So any move except for d6, white presumably would play something different, maybe go for the Rossolimo if knight c6 is played, or play something else if the e6 Sicilian is chosen, maybe bishop e2. But after d6, that's like a signal, because now I don't really gain a tempo on that bishop. I mean, I could still play for e6 and d5, but I've lost a tempo. So I do gain a tempo on the bishop, but I lose it to start with, because I take two moves to get my pawn to d5. So this is not such a bad move as what I was saying during the game. And in fact, it has been played by some pretty good players. Let's see. Magnus Carlsen in this position will also play bishop to b5 check to get a... that's called the Moscow variation, but that's another way of getting into the closed Sicilian. So bishop c4 has some resemblance to that. It's a way to get into a closed Sicilian. So I looked this up in the Chess Games database. This was first played in their database. The earliest example they had was a game by Max Eisinger in 1938, a German player. So we could call this the Eisinger attack if we wanted to, but I like the delayed Bowdler attack. Easier to remember. Let's see. Since then, it's been tried a few times by top-level players. Michael Adams played it a couple times. Also, Peter Lecco in slow games and classical games. More recently, at the top levels, it seems to have disappeared from classical play, but it occasionally shows up in Blitz or rapid games. And there's even a Carlsen-Geary game where Carlsen, with the white pieces, played this against Geary in a Blitz game. So kind of a surprise weapon, I suppose. I'll put a link to that game in the description. You can check it out. It's kind of interesting. So Carlsen actually won with the white pieces against Geary playing this line. Anyway, I continue with e6, which I think is pretty logical. He goes knight to c3. e6 just makes sure there's nothing funny going on with the knight coming in here and putting pressure on f7. So I continue developing with knight f6. He goes d3. That's the idea of this position, although the chess engine in these cases was still preferring moves like castling and d4. So it still prefers the open Sicilian for white to the closed Sicilian. But this is still playable for white. Knight f6. And let's see, we out of the book here. Let's see. Oh, I went knight f6 first. Let's see. He went d3, and then I went g6 at this point. So knight c6 would be the way to continue in the book line, and probably leads to the best position for black. But there's nothing particularly wrong with g6, and I like to play this way. So this should be okay. So in this position, after g6, he played a3. He should probably just castle here, but he has his own setup. He's going for it with a3. You go bishop g7. He goes bishop a2. So he's dropping the bishop back before I get around to kicking it, which I certainly would have done with a6 and b5 at some point. So I castle, he castles, play knight c6 now, and he plays h3. So this keeps my pieces from coming in on the king side. It's a bit slow, and you can see that white has made a lot of moves with the pawns, but I've made a few pawn moves myself, so he hasn't fallen too far behind in development here, and it's a closed position, so white can get away with this. Here's where I came up with the idea of rook b8 and pushing it forward, which I still think is an interesting idea. The chess engine prefers a more direct a6, supporting b5 that way. But there's an idea to keep in mind. You often see this in the minority attack. Put the rook here behind the pawn you want to push. Don't bother pushing the a pawn to a6. It might get to a5 all in one go. Which actually happened in this game. So it kind of saves a tempo, and the rook may be useful on the b file if you open it up. So it's an interesting idea, although the chess engine, as I said, prefers a6 here, but something to keep in mind for your games. Let's see, he goes bishop g5 here. I kick it. He decides not to trade and just drops his bishop back, and now I push on with b5. He lines up queen and bishop, queen d2, lining up, attacking h6, so I defend. He plays rook a to e1, so he's bringing his pieces over to the king side, and I go with a5 here. The chess engine wasn't too impressed with the immediate a5. It preferred actually to play queen c7 first. I guess this gives white time to consider his options. Given what happened in the game, white would probably play knight h2 here, but the chess engine thinks the best move is knight e2, and then it likes a5. So it likes this idea of expanding on the queen side, but it's not in any particular hurry to do it, and it gets the queen out of the way first, so the rooks are one step closer to connecting. This bishop maybe will come out to a6. That's an idea that chess engine has in several lines. Anyway, I just went with a5 immediately, and this is not too bad. Still okay for black is what I mean to say, maybe a slight edge even. And he played knight h2. And once again, the chess engine prefers knight to e2, getting out of the way of the onrushing pawn and maybe bringing it over to the king side in some capacity, or maybe supporting a push with d4. But he plays knight h2. His idea is to push the f-pawn forward, I guess. Although, actually, he didn't play that in the game, so maybe not. I'm not. Usually the idea with knight h2, and what I was expecting for a follow-up was the pawn to f4. So I pushed down with b4, kicked his knight back. And then here I played knight g8. I was a little bit not sure what to do here. Taking has some point. It does open up this b file for my rook. But he can just take back, and he can bring a rook over to challenge me. You know, I'm still not connected on the back rank, so I can't really dominate the b file. So it didn't seem to make sense to take right away. The chess engine likes the move a4, which I guess I thought about a little bit. I was thinking about maybe I would push on this way, he would exchange, and then I would take back, and his bishop would have to go back. But he would have a passed protected pawn on the a file, so it seems like it's double-edged. The chess engine thinks, though, that white would take. I take back and play c3, and then it doesn't want to play b3 here to shut down the bishop. That would be my natural continuation. I suppose the idea here is that since he's played c3, this is starting to become a good diagonal. He can push these pawns forward and make the bishop a good piece on b1. So the chess engine is not in any hurry to chase white's bishop to a better diagonal. It just wants to develop this bishop to this diagonal, where there are some targets, and then it expects white to play f4 and black to come out with queen a5. So slight edge to black. Black is making some progress on the queen side, but white is setting up for a dangerous looking king side attack. So I guess I would be pretty happy to play this position with white, actually. I think white has probably gotten what he wants out of the opening, even though the chess engine still prefers black at this point. Knight g8 also is okay for black, but it's giving white maybe a little more chance. It's not leading to the biggest advantage for black. And white should push on with c3 here. c3, bishop, a6, f4, and let's see, knight gd7. I try to bring my knight in to slow down this push. So you can see this is a slightly more defensive position for black compared to the previous line. I didn't manage to get my queen out over here, and I don't have as much pressure on the queen side, and white is already getting his attack going. So this would be pretty good, and white still has the option of bringing the bishop over to this diagonal if it's handy to try and support these pawn pushes to break down my king side. So interesting play. Instead he went knight g4, and so somewhere around here he's starting to get into trouble. Yeah, I think it's this knight g4 move that leads to trouble for white. And well, it's funny, I had moved my knight out of the way partly so I could play f5, and that is the best move here. Kicking the knight with f5 is the best move, and the knight has to go back. I'm not sure why I didn't play it. I think I would just miscalculated. But if you look at, he's got three pieces attacking here: the queen, the bishop, and the knight. But I have three defenders with the king, bishop, and knight, so that's perfectly safe. I can play f5 in that position. Instead, I played h5, which is okay. It was like the engine's second choice, but f5 was stronger. Anyway, he has to drop his knight back now, and I do win this pawn. I guess that's the other advantage of this c3 move. I was talking about c3 as a way to activate this bishop, you know, try and push these pawns forward from the light squares to the dark squares. But another advantage of c3, if he had played it, was it helps to shut out this bishop. So the line the way it went, I just pick up a free pawn here, and so I'm doing better. Yeah, so knight g4, that was his last chance to play c3, so that's why that was a mistake. Well, one of the reasons why it was a mistake. Also, it kind of just loses a tempo since I can kick it back. Anyway, I take, and then he played knight to f4. So the chess engine thinks knight to f4 is the wrong idea. Once again, well, first it would take here, but then it would play with f4. And that's just a logical continuation for white. You know, white is down a pawn here, but he's going to try and get some play on the king side. And but this should be good for black. I should be able to hold against that attack, but it's typical kind of attacking idea. Let's see. He went knight f4, where the knight is kind of in the way, although maybe there were some ideas of sacrificing over here. Let's see. But yeah, it's too much. He gives up. The other problem with knight f4, cancel that. The other problem with knight f4 is he just when he played, let's see, I played bishop takes b2. When he plays knight f4, he's neglecting the defense of the c3 square, so he just left himself open to this skewer. And here I am just up the exchange. Let's see, he tried queen d1. I took, he took, and brought my knight out. And, you know, it still seemed a bit tricky over here, but basically nothing is working for him. He tried to stir up some activity with these exchanges, but I kick his knight at a good time. Oh, let's see. He took with the knight here. That's right. I still probably would have kicked the knight this way. Well, I did play e5 here. Let's see. He threw in this exchange, and then he brought his knight forward to d5, kicking my queen around. But now my queen has some squares over on the king side here, so this isn't really helping his case. It's just allowing me to start my counterattack. He brought his queen out. I was able to take on h3, so now I've got a couple pieces here against his king. So he went queen h1, coming over to defend. So I pushed f5. I didn't actually see all the ideas behind this f5 push, but actually the chess engine gives f5 as its top choice. You know, I was just thinking that I would push this pawn all the way to to f3 and try and gain control of this square. And the other thing I was thinking was chasing that bishop away, because I wanted to get onto this dark square diagonal, because I saw his king could escape over here. But that was kind of not correct thinking, because I can't really do much. Even if my pawn gets to here, I can't get to this square, so I can't really do much on this diagonal. Plus it leaves this bishop hanging if I don't go to the right square. So, but the value of this move here is shows up in a second or two. Let's see, he played queen h2 here. I push on to f4. That's also a top choice, and the bishop moves out of the way. And by now I had spotted the idea, which is that what this pawn push really did is it freed up this d4 square for my knight. So this is your second chess tip in this video. This is the classical Morphy recipe for attacking. Just bring more pieces into the attack. You know, this knight was sitting over here on c6 not doing anything, but here on d4 it's become a really dangerous piece. And in fact, that's just the key to the fastest win here. Let's see, what did he do here? He dropped his queen back to h1. He's really out of ideas at this point, but there was an immediate threat of the fork of the king and the queen, so he had to do something. But now I have the check. King goes to h2, that's the only move, and then the knight comes in. And it's all over. He gives up his queen and plays on a move or two. Let's see, he went to rook h1, and I go here with mate. If he had gone rook to g1, yeah, I have this check. Actually, that check isn't so good, is it? Right, he can take the bishop. Yeah, it would be a longer game if he played that, but probably simplest would be to move my king over, bring a rook to this file, and I should be okay. Yeah, he can try a few things. He can try bringing his knight in here, but I just have a lot more force than he does. Anyway, he went rook h1, which allowed the immediate mate. So it was an interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon. Bye.